Today on CityCast Houston, CenterPoint has a new plan to make our city more resilient during storms. But guess who's going to have to pay for it? Plus, some Houstonians are about done with H-Town. And one of the most prestigious culinary honors will finally be recognizing Houston's food scene. Houston Landing's diverse communities reporter Monique Welch and Houston Chronicle taco columnist Marco Torres join me to recap yet another intense week in the 713. It's Friday, July 19th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Happy Friday, Marco, Monique. Welcome back in. So excited to chat with y'all. Monique, how are you?
I'm doing great. Now that I have power.
Yeah, I know. Everyone is saying the same thing. Like, finally, power's back. We're getting back to normal. Marco, how are you?
We're doing really well, man. I mean, power is great. AC is even better. And, Wi-Fi helps us work. So,
Yes, that Wi-Fi, that sweet Wi-Fi. So we have a lot to talk about. Marco, we're going to jump right in. You kick us off. What was your biggest story of the week?
well, besides the attempt to a certain former president, biggest story was, of course, the still responding to the Hurricane Beryl in Houston. It says that city officials have risen the official death toll to 18 people and counting, which is really sad. I mean, most of those deaths come after the storm. You did have some deaths for trees and drownings and other things related to the actual storm itself. But then with the lack of power, with the lack of resources, more and more people are getting hyperthermia, which is an elevated heat from the no AC and the no power. So it's really sad that a Category 1 storm is causing so much damage and so much loss of life here in Houston.
Yeah, and in fact, I've seen that number go up to 22 according to Fox 26. So
Oh,
that
wow.
number is ever changing. And we talked about this the week of the storm, that there are going to be a lot of deaths, unfortunately, afterwards because of that loss of power. And it is just heartbreaking to see this number keep rising and rising.
Yeah, and you still have about, 30,000, 40,000 people in the city without power. I think my brother's home up in Humboldt, Tascasita, they're told that they're going to get theirs on Friday, which is crazy.
Wow. Oh my gosh. And Monique, this brings us to what will happen, right? Are there going to be any changes? What is CenterPoint going to do? What is the state going to do about these last 2 weeks and the response from CenterPoint?
Yeah, I mean, that's what everybody wants to know. There's been so many questions, so many eyebrows raised ever since July 9th and Hurricane Beryl hit us. Like Marco said, it was a Category 1 storm. Can you just imagine what were to happen if we were to see a stronger storm? My biggest story really just comes from this Sunday. We saw Governor Greg Abbott kind of in his first major public appearance ever since he returned from Asia. And he very directly addressed CenterPoint Energy and calling out their failures that we've seen since Beryl struck last week, and literally threatening them to either rectify their failures or else they could see their service area reduced. He also, of course, said that many of this isn't new, but he promised that the state utilities regulator, that is, will investigate CenterPoint's response and sent CenterPoint a formal letter with a list of demands that they must have a plan by July 31st, or he'll sign executive orders that will require them to do so. So probably because I'm a journalist, our first instinct is we like to see the powerful held accountable. To me, this is a big deal coming from, our state's top leader, and with a very stern message to kind of see what their plan is so that we're not in this position again.
Yeah, Monique, even here in Houston, Councilmember Abby Kamen said what happened after Beryl should have never happened in the first place. And her quote was, "This feels more like a man-made disaster than a natural disaster. We have to hold those accountable, and we have to make sure that we have the regulatory oversight to properly harden our infrastructure and our utilities." Those are serious words right there, Monique.
Yeah, I mean, rightfully so. We look at what happened and what the region saw in May and with the May Directo, and you kind of think like, well, we should have been prepared for this. Like, how are we not prepared for this? And it all goes back to like what Marco said. This was a Category 1 storm, Yes, there were extensive high speeds from wind, but, you expect things like down trees or, power outage, maybe for a day, but like we're going on more than a week, and there's still people today that are waking up sweating and don't have power. So it's inexcusable.
It really is.
And it's not just the power. So, we had a fridge full of food that went bad. So where do we get the food to feed our families? I was one of those families that I live right by Gallery Furniture. And I took my family to Gallery Furniture because they were offering food, they were offering charging stations and AC. We had to go there for like a couple of hours just to, get sane again and get fed.
Hey, and I also saw that CenterPoint does have a plan to make their electrical power lines more resilient. The plan would take 3 years to build out, and it includes things like replacing old wooden transmission line poles and replacing some towers so they can withstand big gusts of wind. But the cost of all of this is about $2 billion. And guess who's going to have to pay for it, y'all?
Yep.
It's going to be us. And that is something that we were all worried about, that, okay, what is going to happen to our bill? I saw the Houston Chronicle say it could be about $3 a month for the life of that new pole. So that's something to watch out for. And one solution that everyone is kind of debating and not convinced about is, what if we just bury the electric lines? And that would be expensive as well, something that we would have to front for the cost. So, a lot of solutions out there. We'll see what exactly happens.
It all comes out to money, unfortunately. Money that's pretty scarce in today's economy.
Yeah, I think we expected this, but at this point, I can't speak for everyone, but as for me, I just think whatever needs to be done, we need to just do it. If it's $3 a month, I won't complain. Maybe earlier this year, I probably would have, but now that barrel has hit and seen what we've seen, you just kind of want some accountability and something to be fixed by now.
Hey, did y'all see that over 100 restaurants are now part of Tony Busby's class action lawsuit against CenterPoint? They claim CenterPoint's negligence led to restaurants losing thousands of dollars and could contribute to businesses' demise. The lawsuit mentions plaintiffs including restaurants such as Real, Ben Berg, and Hugo Ortega, along with restaurants such as Killen's and Funk's Kitchen as well. So now we're starting to see just exactly how many restaurants are part of this class action lawsuit.
I mean, it's a big deal because, Houston is huge on their dining and their cuisine. And I have so many friends and colleagues and other people that are in the restaurant industry, from servers to bartenders to everything else. And it's crazy. If you don't go to work for one or 2 days, you can kind of manage it. But a whole week and almost now 2 weeks for some people, how do you recover from that with people that are living from paycheck to paycheck sometimes? And even if you are good, then you start eating into your savings. So it's not just, hey, we can't go out for dinner. It's, hey, we don't have work and we don't have, anything for our families for this, almost a month now, so it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, some of these restaurants, they've had to throw away so much food already in the derecho just 6-7 weeks ago. And now to do it again and to throw that inventory out is just devastating.
Yeah, I mean, I missed that one. It doesn't surprise me one bit, though, that Tony Busby is representing so many of those popular restaurants in the area. But my first thought is I think about the small local businesses, the mom and pop shops that, a day or a couple of days, a week is pretty catastrophic.
And you also have people like Chris Shepard and his Southern Smoke Foundation. They're offering aid to some of these workers that work in the service industry, servers, bartenders, cooks, everything like that. They offer those type of services for aid and assistance in these types of situations, which is pretty great. And they just announced their lineup for their Southern Smoke fundraiser that's happening in October. And it's pretty stacked with really great restaurants. So they do a good job over there of really helping out these workers that are essential to our community.
Also, one last thing to note, we haven't heard too much about HISD and what's happening with them in terms of damages, as back to school is about a month away. But 60 HISD campuses had roof or structural damage, and the district is still assessing how many of those will be ready for the first day of school on August 12th. Also, the board is expected to vote on August 8th on whether to place the bond measure, which would be the largest school bond in Texas history and the first for HISD since 2012, on the November 5th ballot. So something else to watch out for when we think about schools and getting back to normal.
Yeah, the safety of the kids is always paramount. So if anybody has any damage at school, is going to be tough, because then you have to think about keeping the kids for longer than you expected, finding daycare, and it's just a big mess.
All right, y'all, let's talk about some stories that we might have missed. And I want to start with you, Monique, because we were talking before the show, and it's really cool to see how moms are stepping up with the power outages.
Yeah, I think this is just another classic example of how Houston takes care of Houston, how the community in times of crisis like this really just steps up to help anyone in need. So my most overlooked is a story from my colleague Maggie Gordon. It's about how a community of women kind of banded together to make sure that Houston babies were fed. And when we think about, Hurricane Beryl and all the extended power outages, and we talk about food spoiling earlier, Marco, you don't really think about breast milk, especially if you're not a parent or if you're not a mother or if this issue doesn't affect you. But it was really eye-opening for me because there was a mother that she profiled in the story out of Spring, Texas, who had just stashed about 1,600 ounces of breast milk in her freezer. And
Wow.
so, really, that's about 2 months, she said, for her 8-month-old child. So, breast milk, of course, like anything in the freezer, it can typically keep cool for about 48 hours in a power outage. But it's a hit or miss before it begins to thaw. It's kind of finicky, and that time window may vary just depending on the freezer's temperature and the time the power shuts off, how cramped it is, a number of factors. But then you add in CenterPoint's sparse communication on estimated restoration times. And, a lot of us were kind of trying to think, okay, how long can we go without power before, we need to figure out a plan? And so this mom, she found a post in a neighborhood mom chat where another local mom was offering freezer space. She probably either had power or a generator or some sort of situation where she had more room in her freezer to help out other moms in storing their milk. So she took her up on the offer. And I mean, this resonated with a lot of mothers who are often overlooked or forgotten about when it comes to breast milk. But I'm not a mother yet, but I can't imagine pumping that much and it all goes to waste. I mean, it's not like you can just replace it at the grocery store.
And Monique, it resonates with me. So, our youngest daughter, when she was feeding, my wife would store a lot of breast milk. And we had a power outage after a storm at our old house. And sure enough, we started panicking because we knew that liquid gold, that's what we call it, right? We're like, what's going to happen to the breast milk? So, even though the power was out for just a couple of hours, I immediately got it and just went to my parents' house. I was like, we need to store it here because we cannot lose this milk. It's been so hard to get the supply built up. So I totally understand what these moms are going through as a dad who was driving around making sure that liquid gold stayed safe.
And even if you try to save some milk with ice, there was so much scarcity of ice around. I was driving around trying to get ice for some of our food and
Mhm.
beverages that we didn't want to go to waste. And ice was scarce. People were sold out, or there were long lines, and it was, for 1 or 2 days you can probably save something like that, but not for a week. A week with no freezer or no power. It's just devastating for those moms.
I hate spam, and I know you do as well. And guess what? Spam starts with your personal data being sold every day. Data brokers collect and sell your personal information to third parties, such as your SSN, address, phone numbers, health and financial records, and much more. These insights are then used by scammers, total strangers, insurance companies, banks, businesses, and even the government to target you with, you guessed it, spam. It's time to protect your data, your time, and your sanity with Incogni. Incogni scrubs your personal info from the web. Simple as that. Incogni takes only 3 minutes to set up, tackles 180 data brokers and people search sites, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Get Incogni today and never look back. Use code CITYCAST for 55% off the annual plan at incogni.com. That's spelled INCOGNI.com. That's incogni.com and use code CITYCAST for 55% off their annual plan. Okay, so everything we've talked about since Beryl impacted our city, we've all felt this sentiment that we're tired of being Houston strong. And heck, you've heard me talk about it on the podcast in the last week, but this sentiment is growing because a study by the University of Houston found that 29% of Houstonians have considered leaving Houston because of weather-related reasons. Now, where could they move? In an ABC 13 story, Mark Jones with UH's Hobby School of Public Affairs said many who ultimately could leave Houston might think of cities like San Antonio or even Dallas. Imagine that. And here's something else, okay? Houstonians are so frustrated right now, and it's not just in our heads that these power outages seem to be more than usual. The Houston Chronicle reported that over the last 5 years, Texas has had more power outages than any other state. So this feeling of I'm done with Houston, there's a lot of factors, but there's also some facts behind this that we are the energy capital of the world, and this keeps happening.
I don't get it. The Dallas part is what really got me, just especially given the whole Houston and Dallas rivalry that we see so often. But I mean, it's a valid concern. I can't tell you how many friends, former colleagues, current colleagues, you name it, just people across the board that I've seen along my Facebook feed expressing how this storm felt different and that they're just getting exhausted. Resiliency is exhausting. And I think a lot of people are just kind of thinking, well, how long do I have to continue dealing with this, especially if you've been in the region or the area for a while? Me, I'm kind of a newcomer to some of these issues, so I'm going to try to tough it out as long as I can, but I certainly understand the concern.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I saw, I think on Instagram or something, a photo that said, "Yeah, energy capital of what? We're supposed to be the energy capital of the world, and we can't even, take care of our own like this." And then you always hear about those people that are from the coast, from LA and New York and Miami. They're trying to move to Texas because of the cost of living and everything like that. And there's people that are in Austin and in Houston that say, "Hey, don't move to Texas, don't move to Houston, stop moving here. We're full," kind of thing. But then they don't tell you about the hurricanes and the floods and the mosquitoes and the heat. So yeah, this is definitely another reason where you might rethink moving to Houston if you're not already here. If you're already here like me, then you're either gonna have to tough it out or then heartbreakingly make that decision that maybe I should either find another place somewhere else or maybe even half time or part time somewhere else.
So last week on Friday night, I was in San Antonio at my uncle's house, and he made a full court press. He's like, "You should move to San Antonio. Look what you guys just went through." And he,
Yeah.
like we're in Houston always saying, "No, keep out of Houston." My uncle was like, "Come to San Antonio. Look at this." He laid out their track record of, "Look, we don't have any issues here." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Man, you're making a good argument right now. Don't do this week."
San Antonio's beautiful, man. They have good food too, good tacos.
All right, Marco, wrap this overlooked story section up for us. What do you got?
So the most overlooked that I have is do you know a little something about the Olympics coming up?
Yeah, next week, right?
Olympics are coming up next week. I kept seeing, I think on KPRC channel 2, they kept saying like 100 days out, or 50 days out. And it's like literally like 7 days out
Yeah.
from the Olympics. And one of the cool stories that I've learned recently is that breakdancing is a new Olympic sport, which is awesome. I grew up, in the 80s and 90s, and I could never do it, but I was always, watching it. And then there's a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Lewis, who's from A-Leaf here in Houston, and he just qualified to be on Team USA, the breakdancing team, which is really cool. I've seen breakdancing competitions over the years through different organizations, and it really is an athletic sport when you think about it. It is obviously entertainment, choreography, dancing, but when you think about it, you see these young people doing very athletic moves, and it's really cool that the Olympic Committee is now seeing that it's going to be a new sport this year. And I just want to say good luck and God bless. His
Yes.
name is B-Boy Jeffro, is what he goes by.
Yeah.
B-Boy Jeffro is going to be representing Houston, representing Team USA in the Olympics in the new sport breakdancing, which is really cool.
I can't wait to watch that. It's going to be so much fun, and best of luck to B-Boy Jeffro. There's so many good storylines of Houstonians in the Olympics. Of course, Simone Biles, her return, how is she going to dominate in what looks to be like her last Olympic Games? I can't wait. Team USA basketball, you got that angle as well. I love the Olympics. I love watching all the sports, even the fringe sports. Like, I don't know why I'm watching archery, but I'm watching it because it's a blast to support Team USA. So that's going to be fun when the Olympics get going next week.
Yeah.
Hey, let's get to our moment of joy. What made you happy this week, Monique?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking so much about Hurricane Beryl and the power outages. I got power towards the end of the week after Beryl struck, but I'm just so thankful and blessed that we have power and AC back. And also, one thing with the hurricane I've been thinking about is, okay, how long will this stall events, openings, closings, entertainment, things like that. But thankfully, it doesn't like we closed any major events in Houston. My sister's in town, so we're going to check out the Lion King over at the Hobby Center. I'm really excited about that. I've kind of been eyeing it every day to make
Yeah.
sure that it wasn't canceled. So I'm glad that and some other things this weekend, like the Missy Elliott concert, which I'll also be attending, are still on schedule because I think now we need that relief more than ever.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch The Lion King at the Hobby Center. And by the way, if you go to houston.citycast.fm, we have a 3 questions up with one of the actors from The Lion King, which is at the Hobby Center. So make sure you check that out. And I know, Monique, you're going to be wearing that Missy Elliott garbage bag outfit, right? And dancing the Superfly.
Of course.
Get your freak on.
So many outfit ideas. I haven't even decided on one yet.
That's going to be a lot of fun. Marco, what was your moment of joy?
So I recently, the other day, went to a mixer that was celebrating the Latin Restaurant Weeks here in Houston, and which started on July the 5th, but it was going to end this week. And because of the closures that a lot of the restaurants endured over the last week, it has been extended until the 26th of this month, so next week, which is really cool because then it gives me time to go and kind of check out some of these restaurants that I haven't been to, and then maybe even revisit some of the restaurants that I love, like Space City Birria in downtown, the new restaurant in downtown called Mama Juana Cafe, which is a Dominican place, and all the taco places like Tacos Doña Elena, which just opened up their second location in the Heights. So I think there's like 85, 87 restaurants on the Latin Restaurant Weeks that are participating, either giving discounts on some current menu items or putting out menu items that are new and only specialty for this time period. So I'm very happy about Latin Restaurant Weeks, seeing that there's a need for this extension and some of the restaurants that are accepting this.
Yeah, that's really good. And hopefully this extension will help a lot of these businesses as they were closed for a while. So if you are going out to eat, make sure you support and check out the links in our show notes for more information on Latin Restaurant Weeks. Mine is food related as well. And I'm not sure if it was because of our episode we did back in March about Houston not being a Michelin guide worthy city, but the French tire company announced that the Michelin guide is coming to Texas, and it will include Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and Austin. Now, this is huge because we will now have Michelin star restaurants here and also in other Texas cities for us to go check out. Now, we're already known on the national scene for our food game, but this really elevates our food culture to another level. So I can't wait to see which restaurants win the 3-star awards or 2, 1, whatever it may be. But one thing to mention, nothing in life is free, y'all. Houston First is the sales and marketing arm of the city, and it is paying Michelin $90,000 per year for a 3-year period in order to have Houston restaurants included in the annual guide, according to Houston Public Media story by Adam Zuvanich. So which restaurant do you think is going to get that coveted 3-star rating first, Marco?
I really think that Artisan's French restaurant on Westheimer, Artisans used to have a location in Midtown, and then they moved over to the old James Coney Island that was on Westheimer and I think Bering, and they created a whole new restaurant there. And I've eaten there a couple times with my friend Chef Eric, and wow, if anybody deserves a star here in Houston, it's probably Artisans. I know we have so many opportunities for a star, from fine dining to taco trucks and taco stands and everything in between. We have such a diverse culinary culture here that somebody has to get something with this Michelin star rating. Otherwise, I'm not buying Michelin tires ever again.
And I'm glad you brought up the taco trucks and the smaller restaurants because the Bib Gourmand is going to be part of this as well. And that recognizes more affordable restaurants that serve up delicious food. Monique, are you hyped about this?
Yeah, I was reading up on this, and to be honest, it's a little shocking that they're just coming to Texas, to be honest, especially Houston. When you think about the food scene here, it's so vibrant. I mean, it's literally one of the city's biggest selling points.
Hmm.
So it's a little shocking that it's just coming, but nonetheless, it's exciting that it is coming. What stood out to me is I was reading the Houston Chronicle's coverage and Houston Eater, that we were talking about some of the restaurant owners who aren't as happy about it. So that was definitely eye-opening, and talking about just some of the competition that it might brew, and giving more attention to some restaurants over others. So I hope that doesn't play out, but nonetheless, I think it'll be good for the city.
Yeah, and if it's anything like the Bear on FX, then that means one of these taco stands are going to convert into a fine dining establishment like they did in Chicago, right? Where they took a sandwich shop and turned it into this classical fine dining establishment and kind of gentrified that restaurant. So, hey, who knows, right? It's a TV show, but yeah, definitely see that side of it playing out as well.
Yeah, it looks like I'm gonna have to come in through the kitchen and just eat with staff meal for some of these times.
And by the way, The Bear season 3, not that good. I'm just going to throw it out there for anybody. If you love that show, The Bear season 3 wasn't as good as the first 2 seasons. Just my opinion. Monique, Marco, thank you so much for joining us. That was a lot of fun and can't wait to talk to y'all again.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for the invite. I'm always down to chat it up with you guys, and let's go Houston.
That was Monique Welch of Houston Landing and food columnist and taco enthusiast Marco Torres. You can dive deeper into this week's stories with the links in our show notes. And if you enjoyed this week's episode, share it with 3 friends who live in the Heights. And if you don't have 3 friends who live in the Heights, then just share it with 3 friends who would love CityCast Houston. Thank you so much. That will do it for this week here on CityCast Houston. Our producer is Carleon Jones. Our Hey Houston newsletter editor is Brooke Lewis. Our executive producer is Laura Isensee. And I'm your host, Raheel Ramzanali. Our music is by the band All the Kimonos. We'll be back on Monday with a look at how our relationship with Houston is changing after Beryl. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new. Monique?
Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say.